Hello, everybody. I'm Raul Ramirez, and this is the Catch Wrestling Alliance. This is our podcast. We're also broadcasting on, of course, our YouTube channel, Catch Wrestling Alliance, and Twitch. And I think we're trying out live streaming on Twitter today. So that's on Catch Alliance. So you can find it there as well. So maybe we're going to try to do maybe like different platforms, see how that works out, or if it's better to reach you at any like certain location, like where you are most. We'll go and try to reach you there. So maybe we'll try adding like a Facebook stream or something like that too. But either way, welcome. Thank you very much for supporting us. And our main goal is to help you become a better grappler, for you to elevate your grappling through catch wrestling. And by doing that, we help keep this great sport alive, right? We keep real wrestling alive. That's one of the things that's kind of been going on recently, where I think it kind of ties into the main subject of our podcast today, where we're talking about like style versus practitioner. And so, like, our main motto, right, is keep real wrestling alive. And because over the years, even though like the what people are calling wrestling nowadays, a lot of times they refer to a lot of the amateur styles, and those the two main ones, folk style and freestyle, both came from catch wrestling. But a lot of people nowadays, they don't realize, or they don't know that history, or they don't quite understand that history. So they're calling these amateur styles this is real wrestling. I've seen that like tons and tons of times, and like these people, especially like even some coaches and stuff like that, like really well respected people. They just they I think because they're so involved with their sport, and say like if they're a high school or collegiate coach, they have their seasons, and so they stay really busy, and so that's all they can really focus on. They can't really focus on talking about catch wrestling or incorporating the submission holds into their style, because those are all illegal moves in their style and what in the amateur style. So um, there's kind of this disconnect that remains, right? And so then that kind of translates to what we're talking about today. So yesterday we released on our website a opinion piece. It was very very short, so you can read it in like just a few seconds, by my good buddy John Strickland from American Hook Wrestling, over on the East Coast of the United States in South Carolina. So John Strickland is like the lineage holder of the Frank Gotch, Farmer Burns lineage of catch wrestling. So like don't confuse him with anybody else, or don't let anybody else fool you. So John Strickland is like this the lineage guy, who basically is passing down, and who knows the style like the best. So don't let anybody fool you thinking, or don't believe the claims that they know things. They have a more robust understanding than John Strickland, because it's just not true. So anyway, he was responding to a question that I also have seen many many times over the years. A lot of times people try to defend their martial art, and which is totally a natural thing to do. They try to defend their martial art, saying that, oh well, uh, the style is not like the main thing. It's the practitioner, because the practitioner can then, like if you're this special person, then you can end up winning a match. And like no matter what, it's the person, right? And I think that kind of plays into like this poetic fantasy type thing, where we see in the movies where it's like a beginner all of a sudden can beat like these, like the experts, right? I think a famous movie that's kind of still popular nowadays, or at least the show is popular, with it is like Karate Kid, like Cobra Kai, where it's like true, the Daniel, like what, like he beat the bad guys or the bad karate school at the end, and he true that he trained hard or whatever for however long, but these other kids seem to have trained for years. So really, they probably should have won anyway. But anyway, so I think we get this notion in our mind that like the guy we like or the good guy is gonna win. It's the practitioner, not the style, right? So let's go ahead and kind of go over what John wrote. So the article is actually called "It's Not the Style, It's the Practitioner," right? With the question mark. So it's not the style, it's the practitioner. So um, John believes that it's just not true. There are styles that are clearly better head to head. And this is kind of one of the things that I really want to touch on. Okay, but we'll continue with what he wrote. Why do you think MMA was forced to make major rule changes in the 2000s? Why do refs help people out of positions and situations? How many times have you heard, let them up? I think it's better to say it like this. There are styles that are close enough in functional techniques that match up better, and it comes down to the person, not the style. That I could agree with. The other is BS, and we all know it. So I don't have John on to further elaborate, but I just want to kind of talk about some of the things that it made me think about, and hopefully we can get John on sooner than later. He's been on several times, so we'll get him back again pretty soon. But um, like one of the second lines that he wrote was this: there are styles that are clearly better head to head, and this is what I've been trying to explain also for years, because we always get that comment where it's the practitioner, and but the thing is the practitioner should have um, should have like the best foundation, or it could be like the practitioner with the best foundation can have that or could get that edge over the competition. But the thing is, so a lot of styles uh tend to be a little bit more maybe like they'll focus on one thing in particular, or even over time, even if they didn't start off kind of like only thinking about or only focusing on one thing, then they could be a little bit more better or more well rounded. But we have styles, say Taekwondo is a pretty good example. So like once they got into the Olympics, the rules changed so much that nowadays, if you go to a Taekwondo studio, a lot of times many schools will be only doing the Olympic rules. Same with judo. So, and of course, the biggest example, freestyle wrestling. So even though it was called amateur catch as catch can when the Olympics were started again, instantly they eliminated the submission holds, and then you saw how it diverged over the many decades. And so then they have a lot of things, a lot of techniques that leave them open to getting submitted, and we see that in a lot of grappling tournaments. We see that, and we kind of talked about it, especially last year. There was that documentary from Flow Grappling where where they show like they pay a lot of the best American wrestlers to do a no-gi submission only competition, and like none of them won really, so they all got submitted. So it shows that they've strayed so far away from like the original style that it leaves them vulnerable to certain attacks or certain counters, right? So what I'm trying to say, and I think kind of what John was kind of talking about, is that some styles, if they're, I say like, well, let's go ahead and talk about catch wrestling because that's the channel that we're this is our thing, right? But catch wrestling, and one of the main reasons why I like it so much is because it still retains a lot of the kind of combat aspects that are becoming more and more popular today, right? So back in the day, they still had the submissions, they still had the whole idea of pinning someone to control them, and then you can set up your submission hold. If you don't get the pin, or vice versa, you can get the submission hold and roll them over onto their back to pin them. But either way, you're showing a lot of control over the person so that you can uh, do what you need to do according to the rules. And then there were all these different. Oh man, actually, I should have. Reminds me of comment from Martin Burns, but several people. Recently, in the past few weeks, we've been talking also about Tom Connors, the man who trained Martin Burns, and they all kind of they have written similar things where they talk about ultimately their foundation in catch wrestling helped them to like compete successfully in other grappling styles, because a lot of times, especially back in those days in the 1800s and early 1900s, they would travel around doing different events, and so then a lot of times they would agree to competing in like say jacket wrestling or judo, or different styles that were popular at that time. And Burns and Tom Connors, and others, but I should have prepared um, Martin Burns' statement on that. But like basically, they all kind of say that it's their foundation in catch wrestling that allows them to be successful in other styles, right? And that's kind of one of the main things that we're talking about here, where the style can prepare you to become a successful practitioner, right? And so that's why I tend to not be so interested in some styles that were kind of like have only one focus so much. But I mean, if you enjoy, I mean, I I still enjoy doing like no-gi grappling. I do no-gi all the time. Um, uh, the kickboxing style that I like, I feel the same way about it as I do catch wrestling. It's the Chinese kickboxing, the Sanda. That's what I teach also at UCLA. That is a style that has like a lot of the punches and kicks, similar to Muay Thai or Taekwondo, but it has like a wider variety of strikes as opposed to Muay Thai, but it has more of a wrestling base. So it has a lot of takedowns, has a lot of leg catches, kind of a lot of takedowns from tying up, so you could totally kind of get into a clinch and take down the person. So that allows it to be a little bit more, actually a lot more practical in an MMA situation or potentially like a self-defense situation. So it has all these like it gives you a wider foundation, so that if you do any kind of tournament, at least you would be familiar with some of the scenarios that you might find yourself in. So that's why I think Sanda is a really good striking base for people who want to do MMA or whatever. But also catch wrestling is also another one of those styles that is a good base for also doing MMA or like no-gi and stuff like that. So and of course, wrestling as well. At least you'll have a good understanding of staying off your back and trying to control someone. So this is kind of the main point. It might not be John's point specifically, but it's more of my as I said, I can't speak for him, but it's definitely a lot of my like my perspective on the subject, because I hear this question over and over, and then a lot of times people, they just revert to their thing, like whatever style they do, they're like, oh, this, they try to justify it. So people have their opinions, and um, uh, you can leave it like that, I guess, because I'm not going to try to change anyone's mind. This is just my opinion. And I tend to agree with John Strickland in this case, where the foundational style can give you that advantage. And, we have a lot of evidence, even from the 1800s all the way till now. And say with regards to amateur wrestling, it's like flow grappling. It brought a lot of our best amateur wrestlers, and they all got submitted. And what? Oh yeah, was oh I should. Well, we'll talk about that fight too. Is recently we had it was in one championship in Singapore. Um, we had this one American who was a collegiate wrestler, and he was doing pretty well. But he lost two MMA fights in a row, I believe. So he got submitted by Shinya Aoki, who was attacking him really similarly to some of these attacks that you actually would see, or you have pictures. I have pictures of Farmer Burns teaching. So he was doing these like kind of back attacks. They're pretty. I'm sure we did we did do a video of it. So we'll kind of anyway. So this American wrestler, I think his name's James. He has a Japanese last name. Anyway, he lost again to one of Khabib's wrestlers, who seems to have like a little bit more of a mix of the freestyle with some of the submissions. So yeah, he just got manhandled. So I think we might start seeing more of that again. Like if so, I think since Khabib is so popular, and he's building up his legion of fans and fighters. So maybe we'll see the wrestling evolve in MMA, because a lot of times it's just like maybe trying to stay on top, trying to ground and pound, but there's like this big disconnect between the submissions and the wrestling and stuff. So all right, let's go ahead and get to your questions. Go ahead and feel free to argue with me or whatever. It's totally fine. Totally fine. I'm just gonna drink a water. I'm not sick. It's just a little dry today. Jonathan Jimenez, I am a firm believer that it's the practitioner, not the style. I think you're just completely wrong there, because the practitioner trying different things. Again, that's why I always talk about like no, I just disagree. The practitioner, especially without any kind of experience in certain situations, then chances are they'd have to be very smart to figure out the proper solution to the problem. As a practitioner, it's your job to adapt and challenge what you're doing and change it to fit what you are up against. Or you can practice a style that a little bit more varied, that kind of gives you those tools, right? So it's not so foreign when you get into different scenarios. Sensei Emmett, practitioner is always responsible for themselves. If you're not getting what you need in a system, you can venture into other systems and improve yourself. Yes. And so, yeah, that's the thing. I think we kind of mentioned like, we have the Taekwondo example, we have the freestyle example, these styles that have become kind of like so specialized for, say, Olympic competition. And then the rules themselves have become more and more restrictive. So then these styles kind of turn into far different from their origin, right? So yeah, you're definitely going to have to improve that, or like venture out. And so, and maybe even how we just talked about Khabib and how they're doing their wrestling or whatever. It's I guess it can't be kind of like put into the Olympic freestyle box, right? Because you see Khabib submitting people and all that. So it's its own thing. And what Jonathan Jimenez, yep, and blend it into your toolkit. Yeah, so it'd be so again, think of it as like having a good this might work. Having a good foundation could be kind of like having a good computer operating system that allows you to easily add these other types of systems in it, right? So a good operating system would be something like catch wrestling, or even with regards to striking, I think it's like the Sanda, right? That has the two aspects, the striking plus the takedowns already kind of built in. So then you don't have to then go out and learn. Say like if you start off doing Taekwondo or Muay Thai, and then now you have to go learn Judo to get that bridge, to get a lot of the takedowns, and then you have to learn maybe Jiu-Jitsu or some wrestling. And so then all these different styles, it's almost like you're gonna have to put in a lot more effort, a lot more time, a lot more work to become really proficient at all these different things that you're trying to all these different ingredients you're trying to add to one cake, right? Whereas you already have the the sanda cake, right? Or you already have the catch wrestling cake, right? That's already, got all the ingredients kind of like perfectly balanced. It's already like this standard recipe that's been there, and it's kind of it's the classic. It's the classic Christmas cake, right? So it's there, right? Um, um, yeah, so that's kind of the thing. So it's like you'll have these the operating system, or if you're kind of trying to add all these different ingredients into one thing, it might not taste right, because that's one of the things too. It's like especially with amateur wrestling, um, you you're gonna have this like if you come from a jiu-jitsu background and then you want to go and do amateur wrestling, it's especially if they're showing you stuff that are in the rules. I mean, they have a lot of rules, right? So you can't so you can't clasp your hands around their body and stuff like that. They have all these different strange rules that benefit them, or that kind of go along with the main, or like what they consider being fair. But jujitsu doesn't have that kind of rules. Also, catch wrestling doesn't have these kinds of rules. So then you're kind of going from one style to another style, that kind of fit themselves into a very specialized box. And so then that won't exactly be kind of like it won't necessarily like work with your operating system so well, right? And we've seen statements like that from really popular grapplers talking about how much they hate doing wrestling and whatnot, but they can learn about the grind that way. Usually they try to talk about some kind of benefit that they learn, but you're not really seeing too much of that kind of bleeding over into their grappling. A lot of times, like, you'll see these popular grapplers, maybe you see video footage of them doing some training, and then their next match they're sitting on their butt and kind of going for leg locks, and that's kind of like what's popular nowadays. So they kind of revert to doing what's popular. So Jonathan Jimenez, I can agree a good foundation is best to start with. My first karate place was full contact, and I learned my first knee bar and sweeps. Even a few judo throws. Places with strict rules can be a buzzkill. Yes. Rhett Raymond. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Yes, I've forgotten how limited folk style wrestling is until I wrestled my son a few days ago. It's just super limited and it's frustrating. Yeah, I really agree. And it's kind of like I enjoy watching the Olympics, especially like actually it's kind of funny. That's why I think I enjoy watching the women compete a little bit more than men, because a lot of times the men is just kind of the same attacks, kind of same head on, double leg, just kind of like that. But a lot of times in the women's matches, you saw more of a variety of techniques, especially a variety of takedowns. But truly, yeah, they're trying to. It seems like the women are trying to find the variety in a box that's very limited, very it just has a lot of rules, right? And a very short time limit. So it's like they're trying to be creative with what little they have. And of course, no submission holds and all that, and all these kinds of things that are potentially dangerous and whatnot. So yeah, I'm glad you see that, and maybe it took your time um, out of folk style to then when you go back, then you can see it, right? Just how limited it is and how frustrating it is. So it's like it's almost like if you see someone doing well, it's great. It's like you're the best. You're the best at doing that, right? You're the best at doing that folk style game, right? But does that in turn translate at being the best at doing the MMA or doing no gi? Definitely not no gi, right? Because they're not dominating. Right. Jonathan Jimenez, watching women and smaller sized men have real good technique and are more technical. At least it shows in MMA. Yeah. Hopefully, we can get some bigger guys in MMA that become more technical. A lot of times, it's just like a slugfest, right? So they're just like punching each other in the head over and over again, and then they go for the knockout. But yeah, they can still use technique also, right? So I think a lot of times it's that they're just like these big guys who are able to get the knockout quickly. So then maybe they don't have to become as technical. But yeah, the little I think maybe there's even more competition in the lighter weights. So yeah, you're gonna have to become better, right? More technical at the striking and at the grappling. All right. All right. Hey, Carter, Kemp, I don't know what your message is. Hopefully everyone can hear. All right. Okay, so going back to the main idea, the style, can provide you a great foundation, right? So, if you choose to say do MMA, which is the mix, there isn't an MMA style, right? But some of the styles that can give you a better foundation just has to be hands down catch wrestling, right? Also, I'll just throw that in there because I teach it also. The Sanda, right? So that also gives you a really good foundation because it has the striking and the like the kind of, well, at least the takedowns it doesn't go down, it doesn't continue onto the ground, but at least it has that bridge. It's already baked in, right? It's already built in where you can catch or clinch up with someone and get that takedown. Right? And then you can use the the whatever, like I would say, then you can blend the catch wrestling in there to follow through. All right, Ambrosius Blem. What's up? Cool that you're online again. Yeah, try to make sure we can do this weekly. And just to let people know, we're trying this week on Twitter as well. So our Twitter handle is Catch Alliance. So right now we're of course on YouTube, Twitch, and on Twitter. So hopefully that stream, like the Twitter stream, looks good. Um, just let us know. Hopefully everything looks good. Um, all right. Okay. So with that being said, like if you're not in Los Angeles, so I'm in Los Angeles. I teach at Fight Science MMA every Thursday. Also, I teach at UCLA. This semester or this quarter, since that we've had like spikes in COVID, the gym. I usually teach catch wrestling at UCLA as well, but they've at least right now they've paused and halted grappling, all grappling classes, but we can do the striking stuff. Like, so we can do the Sanda online on Zoom, which is really strange, but there's a lot of stuff you can do, at least with kickboxing, without, like sparring. So there's a lot of stuff we can do there. So, so we're just on Zoom for the Sanda. So, but once we get permission to be like back on campus or back in the gym, then we'll resume all the catch wrestling stuff later. What are you saying? What were you saying? Oh, Sanda or Sanda, right? So Sanda, right? So that's the Chinese kickboxing that I teach. It's like a combination of Muay Thai and maybe like judo or whatever, or some of the big time wrestling, or like maybe even Greco-Roman or something, right? So we have a lot of all the striking stuff, right? But or even a wider variety of like kicks and stuff compared to Muay Thai. But we have a lot of catching, like leg catching or kick catching, a lot of clinch work where you can take the person down. You can do this, you pick them up, slam them. a lot of stuff like that, like a lot of the wrestling stuff. Of course, like the catch wrestling. We have all these suplexes and stuff like that. So Sanda has those things. It's all included, or it's all part of the rules. It's okay. And so it has all that kind of baked into the style. So it's Sanda, right? So Sanda, and so that's the kickboxing style that I that I like, and I'm kind of grouping in with catch wrestling as being one of the better foundational styles for depending on what you want to do, whether you want to do the self-defense stuff, because it's really easy to add that, because it's what a lot of times it's being taught for, like, to the police and the like the army and stuff like that, and in China and whatnot. So it's really easy to have the Sanda as a base, and then you can add the different types of uh, self-defense or MMA stuff. Ambrosius, do you consider the fighting style of Khabib very close to a real style? Just added striking for defense and setups. I think that's kind of what I don't know all their details, but I mean they always talk about like the dad being like really great at blending a lot of stuff. So I think they they've kind of made kind of their own thing, which is really great. Or it's like really effective, right? Because it's not just like folks, or it's not just freestyle. It's very, very effective. Ambrosius, that's interesting. Is Sanda organized in the United States? Yes, it was way more popular in the early 2000s, but it is kind of faded. But I mean, they're still, I guess, like national competition, and I think I've seen online where they're trying to at least kind of do another push, because it is way more popular outside of the United States. They still have world competition and stuff. So it'd be great if the United States can kind of make more of an effort for it, so we can have better competition. We can make a really good team, and send them out to compete in the in the World Sanda Cup. Wasn't Kung Lee a Sanda guy? Yes, yes. So, and that was the thing. It's kind of like they made him, because he was so popular. They made him the head coach, and then when he was the head coach, he also started getting into movies and then UFC and stuff like that. So the Sanda stuff kind of really fell. It wasn't like his main thing. So I think that's one of the reasons why it lost a lot of popularity in the United States. Our team, just was a lot of his people, and even the tryouts, right, for the national team. It's basically you would go to fight their people, and even in their rules, they wrote like, so even if you win, right? So say if you weren't part of his school and you would go and you beat his people, they put in the rules, like they stipulated that you still might not be part of the team. Right? So it's kind of like it's almost pointless. I think Kung Lee probably ended up hindering our U.S. Sanda efforts, um, and so he didn't really like help. And then when he lost interest, then it really devastated Sanda in the United States. But other countries, still going strong. What the Philippines is actually really strong in Sanda. They've had a lot of people who are able to go and win um, in win against the Chinese. So the Chinese, for certain weight divisions, they tend to dominate, but the Philippine or like fighters, and even there was one fighting in one championship, a woman, Priscilla. She was able to. So she was Indonesian national champion and stuff like that. So she was pretty successful in MMA. And then you see a lot of the women in UFC, like the Chinese women in UFC, and one championship from China, having the Sanda background and just really dominating. So it's a really great stand-up style. And then when you combine the sanda with the catch wrestling, then then you become unbeatable. I'm not kidding. You can't say that, but at least it gives you a good foundation. So you're used to the strikes, and then you can get the takedown, and you can follow through with the catch wrestling. And with that being said, actually reminds me that I did make a online course about that on our website, so catchwrestlingalliance.com. It's called like Sanda and catch wrestling combinations for MMA. So show a lot of the main leg kick catches. Show a few different things. So some variations on the common kicks, and like how to get the takedown, how to follow through a little bit with the even some leg locks or some pins and stuff like that. So that's up on our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. Ambrosius Blem. That seems like a great combo. I agree. Yeah, so hopefully with all the COVID stuff, if we can get that to die down a little bit, we can have more classes going and stuff, and or maybe we can get back to doing the classes at UCLA at least. All right, so go ahead and continue asking your questions, but I think we kind of talked about the different aspects of the different styles. The other thing that John Strickland wrote about in his article, and I'll also have that linked in the description. The article was about like style versus practitioner, and ultimately my point, and I think his point as well, is the certain styles just don't match up well against each other. Also, so if you have like this wrestling style and you're able to hold someone down and ground and pound them, and they're not able to get up, then that's a huge problem in MMA. And so one of the things that John mentioned was the aspect where he says, like, haven't you ever heard when in an MMA fight when someone is or when the crowd is yelling, like, let him up, ref? So that still happens, right? So when you have like a more superior wrestler and they're able to hold that person down or hold their opponent down and ground and pound them, and the other person's not able to get up, then like visually it tends to get boring for the majority of the spectators. So then they start yelling, let them up. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It actually is showing some technical superiority. And so catch wrestling can offer that, right? Ambrosius Blem. I am sick with COVID right now, but not so bad. Well, I'm glad you didn't get a bad case. So hopefully you recover quickly and take care of yourself. Okay, so Rhett. Do you think jiu-jitsu is absolutely necessary for MMA, even with catch? Because catch doesn't focus on being on your back, but you could end up there somehow. Yeah. So the idea is that you get really good at, so wrestling doesn't necessarily, you don't stay on your back, but you have a lot of ways of getting off of your back, right? So it's not that because like finding yourself on your back in catch wrestling also happens, right? But we have a lot of ways to get off your back, get back on top of the other person, or even to stand up again, and that is even more important, right? So it's not just like you don't have to accept being on your back, right? Ambrosius Blem. To me, the Team Quest people have perfected wrestling for fighting. Ambrosius, thanks. All right. Well, give us an update on your recovery, but I'm happy that you had a mild case. All right. So yeah, that's the thing. So I do enjoy. So getting back to Rhett's statement about, do I think jiu-jitsu is absolutely necessary? Potentially not, right? Especially if you have a top-down approach and you can, escape if someone puts you on your back, or be really difficult to be put onto your back. Then you're going to be using that whole guard game a lot less, right? So I think what would be necessary is just being familiar with some of the attacks from the bottom, like some of the counter submission holds, like making sure you don't get caught in a triangle, or maybe some kind of like their kimura stuff, from guard and whatnot. That would be some of the things that you might see more so in MMA. It's going to be a lot more sophisticated when you get to doing nogi, but a lot of times it is all about keeping that top pressure. So you don't necessarily need to be completely familiar with everything, or like every trend in nogi, because that's always going to be changing. But a lot of times, keeping the whole idea of a pin, keeping that top pressure down, and you're limiting the ability to move of your opponent, especially when they're underneath you, that will prevent them from being able to set up a lot of their attacks, right? So that's kind of one of the things you want to focus on. You can kind of make yourself familiar with these other styles, but I a lot of times I don't necessarily think it's critical for you to spend a lot of time working on whatever you're fighting off your back, or at least not necessarily fighting off your back, but like doing submission holds off your back. Jonathan Jimenez, wrestling the last few years has been really showing its strength in MMA. Don't be fooled by the wrestlers being promoted to blue belts in BJJ schools. Their wrestling has been winning fights. Yes, yeah, and I think that was the whole idea of wrestlers being promoted really quickly. I think that kind of shows, or someone was talking about it on YouTube, where they're saying where it's like it's kind of the way for jiu-jitsu to then claim superiority, even though someone was only using wrestling techniques to beat everybody. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things where there's one of the tricks, I guess, and supposedly they couldn't do it against Khabib because he's really honest about how he's just using his wrestling knowledge to beat everybody. Good point from Ambrosius Blem coming in. Sakuraba almost never fought off his back. He was a master of turtle defense and get-ups and a catch wrestler. Yeah, he trained with a couple of my coaches, Billy Robinson and Roy Wood. So, correct. Yeah, so you don't necessarily need to be, trying to triangle everyone and, like trying to do a bunch of the stuff from being pinned. A lot of times what you want to do if you're about to get pinned is to get back, like how Ambrosius mentioned, going back to what people are calling turtle, right? We usually call it like a defense position or referee's position. That will offer you a tremendous amount of like protection, and make sure that you don't, make sure how to protect against chokes, because basically that'd be pretty much your only worry. And it's really easy to defend against, or it's really easy to make it difficult to be choked, even though you give up your back, right? So that's it. I think that'll be another topic for another podcast episode, where we talk about this whole notion of like giving up your back, because in wrestling, amateur wrestling, and also in catch wrestling, it's not a problem. It's actually preferable. So there, right? So there's so many ways to neutralize an attacker, or like your opponent, by using turtle instead, right? And I think it'd just be difficult to describe it right now, but so it's probably better to show you. So maybe we'll do some videos about that. All right. Okay, we'll keep on asking. Ambrosius, and if people stuck their arms in too far, he went for knee bars. He went for knee bars. Oh, he went to knee bars. Americanas, double wrist locks. Oh, Jonathan. So Jonathan, he's begun training with me at Fight Science. And he says, I have been more comfortable being in defense position more and more nowadays. Yeah, so Jonathan, he he trains with me, and then also he goes back to where he lives, which is actually pretty far from LA. So I really appreciate him making the trek. And then he goes back to his home jiu-jitsu school, and he's finding using the catch wrestling techniques very beneficial. And there's another student that I think I want to, get a statement from that, because he kind of had an epiphany recently, where he was thinking that, like, oh yeah, I'm watching all these instructional videos from a lot of the amateur wrestlers and doing a lot of these things, where he was kind of like in his mind compartmentalizing these things, which we were talking about earlier, where it's like these different styles become so specialized in a certain thing, right? And their rules become so specialized, especially once they become an Olympic sport, that it might not necessarily be the most beneficial for you if you want to do MMA or even no-gi. So one of our students was talking about how he's been training, and then he sees, like, when I'm rolling with students, and when, like, he was having a hard time with one student, and then when I rolled with that person, I just kept submitting the person over and over very quickly. And so he said that when he was watching that, then it kind of made that switch in his mind, where it's like, even though he's been watching some of these instructional videos from famous wrestlers, and even some famous grapplers and stuff like that, it still has this separation, right? This kind of disconnect. Uh, Whereas, like I was talking about, like, we have the cake, right? So we have the catch wrestling cake, right? But then if you're trying to make a similar catch wrestling cake, and you're using these different ingredients, or you're using the amateur wrestling and then some of the jiu-jitsu stuff, a lot of times it doesn't blend as well, right? Because it doesn't have that kind of like that foundation that's already kind of like this tried and true recipe, right? That tastes good, right? But you're trying to pull these things together that are, have different goals, different different ways of doing things, almost like different languages. So I think it's also another good example, where it's like, even though we have the Roman languages, right? So it's still difficult to say, if I speak Spanish, it's difficult for me to understand French, even though it's still kind of like the same family, right? It's still difficult for me to understand maybe Romanian or something, because it sounds similar, sounds like I should understand it, but it's still different enough, right? So maybe that's a better example. Yeah, Jonathan Jimenez, 45 minutes driving. So it's just a typical day in LA. Kind of true. Yeah, and he kind of gives the point here, where it says, so Jonathan says, defense position with wrist control. It's been your move recently, right? Great. No, it's really great. So wrist control, these different types of things. So you wouldn't necessarily be in turtle, just like being there, like balling yourself up, letting someone beat you up or whatever. There's a lot more to it than just rolling, giving them your back and whatnot. You can still be fighting off of while you're being what we would call defensive, right? Your referee's position, you can still be setting up submission holds and counters, and that's the really big part of wrestling. All right, great. Yeah, so go ahead and keep commenting in the comment section. I want to let people know that, so we're still going to be teaching. So every Thursday night at Fight Science at 8:30 p.m. Feel free to come in, let them know at the front that you're here to take the class. So yeah, so there is a drop-in fee and all that, but yeah, so just let them know that you're here to take my class, and that's totally fine with the school, that if you only want to do my class. Also, if you're not in the LA area, if you don't mind, if you're not in the LA area, you're still in California, and if you want to make the trek, actually, we've had people come from as far as San Jose. So for those of you who don't know, California, that'd be like someone driving across a few states to come take class. So San Jose is close to San Francisco, so San Jose is probably, it's a few hundred miles away. And but anyway, if you're not willing to drive a few hundred miles, a few hours, and you want to, or if you want to, make sure that you keep yourself safe um, from COVID and whatnot, you want to do some training in the safety of your own home. We have online instruction on our website, so catchwrestlingalliance.com. It's the program we call CWA Academy. I think I want to try to revamp that a little bit. I want to try to add a more for more serious students. Maybe try to add a more of a coaching aspect where it's like we can actually set up monthly meetings where I can make sure everything's you're learning everything properly. Because right now the way it's set up is that we have a few fundamentals courses where you would do the training and then you would send me a video, or we can set up a Zoom meeting where you can kind of show that you learned the fundamentals, and then after you pass that, then I give you more access to more advanced lessons. But then I also would want to see footage of you, sparring, with any partner or whatever. A lot of times there's people who they'll set up the camera and they show me sparring at their local jiu-jitsu, like their local nogi class and whatnot. Totally fine, because I want to make sure that you're actually using a lot of these techniques in your grappling. So even if it is a no-gi class, I want to see that you're using the catch wrestling principles and techniques in those situations, right? So then that actually shows that you've become, or you've embodied these lessons and you're becoming a catch wrestler, right? So, but I want to try to make it where maybe we can kind of like, because the website I'm using is making it more easy to integrate a lot of these things. So I think I'll be adding more to the what I call the CWA Academy. So if you can join that now, but I'll just know that I'll be adding more functions to it. We also have like a chat room in there, so I try to post announcements and get your feedback, and anybody can talk with each other and ask your own questions and stuff like that. So that's the CWA Academy. We also have kind of like our own. We offer like instructionals that are kind of like just of specific topics. So if you don't want to join the academy, there's also different things that you can learn about. We have like a no-gi judo class up there. We also have the Sanda and catch wrestling combinations for MMA class up there. And we have the new one that's featuring Jonathan Jimenez, who's here in the chat, where it's Pressure Pass System Volume 1. And we'll go ahead and we'll try to release Pressure Pass System Volume 2 coming up pretty soon. So there's different things that like that are up there. But if you want to become like officially recognized as one of the students, then you would want to do the Catch Wrestling Alliance or CWA Academy. So that's up there on our website. But if you just want to support us, you can go to our YouTube channel and become a channel member. We try to put some additional fun videos and stuff up there just for members only. There's a couple tiers up there that you can support us through. So just basically we appreciate you, because the goal is to help keep real wrestling alive, and the way we do that is by helping you become a better grappler, right? It's helping you to elevate your grappling ability. So that's why we're offering a lot of different things, a lot of different ways for you to become a better grappler. So that's kind of a quick menu of a lot of things that we offer, right? So with regards to becoming a channel member on our YouTube channel, you just look at the box underneath the video that says join, and you can click on that and you can see our tiers and stuff like that. So anything is appreciated. Ambrosia's Blim, CWA Academy. Yes, that's on our website. It should be, once you go to our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com, it should say CWA Academy at the top. It's one of the, it's going to be next to our blog and our podcast link, but then it's going to say CWA Academy. Should be right there at the top. All right. Okay, so we're nearing the hour mark. So I think maybe we'll go ahead and call it a day. Thank you everyone for listening. Also, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. We should be available there. So thank you very much. We really want to help you to elevate your grappling, and in turn, together, we help keep real wrestling alive.